Just a quick warning to my fellow panelists. I came here to win. I didn't come here to make friends, and I will be America's next top remix theory panelist. I can feel that. But in seriousness, I come here to speak to you about the ethical foundations of critical remix, one aspect of which is the creative lie, a subject near and dear to my colleague Diran Lyons, who wrote that portion of the paper. I will address the need to define critical remix as a free speech issue. Free speech equals free media. By examining how we define this work and its boundaries, I will address how we might frame remix so that future artists can rely on these principles as a foundation for their right to create. It is peculiar that we find ourselves fighting yet again for the rights of artists to create using the material they see in the world around them. Duchamp, Rauschenberg, Warhol, Richard Prince, Jeff Koons. How many times have we fought these battles in the history of art? But the powers that be are relentless in their quest for control, and so these rights are again under attack. This time, let us think broadly as we define remix, so that when someone remixes a hologram, he or she won't have to go through this fight all over again. Indeed, we see the value of a good definition when we consider artists such as Kenneth Tin Kin Hung or Lindsay Scoggins, who did Wonderland Mafia, you can find on YouTube, whose work exists in the margins of what we might consider critical remix. So what is it? Critical remix is all work which reuses media to critique media and society, and thus deserves our protection as a form of free speech. Political remix video, or PRV, is probably the most common term, and it's a very good descriptive expression, but political fails to communicate the basic nature of the work as a critique of media and a critique of society, as reflected in media. All remix is political when we consider it in light of copyright issues or when we accept Thomas Mann's proposition that everything is politics. But if political means politicians, laws, and the affairs of state, then quite a few of the best remixes are not political. Moreover, the word political conjures a mood of polarity that overshadows other amazing qualities of this work. Eric Faden offers both critical media and media styles as alternatives. Stylos French for pen and by extension critique, suggesting an act of writing as opposed to digital media. On the other hand, critical media suffers from ambiguity in its use of the term media, perhaps explaining Eric's need for two expressions. Instead, consider critical remix, which is both inclusive and specific. Critical because the work is critique, critical for its criticizing perspective, and critical because it is necessary in our society. And remix, of course, is a combination of existing and created elements, some of which may include video, audio, animation, or graphics. By examining our terminology and defining boundaries in this way, we can articulate the value and potential of critical remix in a way that everyone can understand and appreciate. Gaining the appreciation of a broader public will solidify critical remix as relevant to both public discourse and fine art. Governments, corporations, and media outlets work in the service of the rich and powerful to shape our perceptions to their ends. Critical remix subverts this propaganda by empowering individuals with limited resources to speak in the language of the original message, recontextualizing it to shed light on misleading or false messages contained within. And while corporations may someday tire of targeting teens for downloading songs or remixing movies and tribute, they will always target people who aim to derail the corporate agenda. We must protect the ability of remixers to create their art by building the ethical foundation for their work now, and protect future remixers whose work will exist in forms we have yet to imagine. This freedom is needed especially for those whose ideas are controversial or unpopular. History shows us that new ideas tend to be difficult to listen to or accept, even when they reflect reality. How are we to recognize the herald of our evolution if we silence the voices of dissent? Thomas Mann also said, opinions cannot survive if no one has a chance to fight for them. And I think around here we've got plenty of chances and plenty of fighters, don't we? I think we're all willing to fight for these values and these ideas. And you can feel the passion of a critical remixer through the clear message and strong point of view that energizes his or her work. At times they seem drawn to controversy, ironically polemical, in light of the fundamental goal of remix to dismantle the hegemony of discourse. But this is just a natural result of their dedication and willingness to fight for their beliefs. We need people like this for their creativity and dedication. Founding fathers like Benjamin Franklin were passionately involved in publishing and made certain that the First Amendment spoke clearly of the broad need for freedom of speech and press. While these rights may still exist in a literal sense, they mysteriously apply differently to digital media. Artists are forced to break the law to collect material for a legal purpose. DMCA and fair use documents take precedence over First Amendment principles. And I encourage you to hear my colleague Desiree D'Alessandro speak about her experiences with this issue tomorrow during the lightning round in the auditorium at noon. The legal intersection of copyrighted content and fair use documents demand great attention, but an equally significant ethical issue concerns the truth value of critical remix. The detractor is primarily concerned not with whether this type of speech is permissible, but whether it ultimately contains any cultural value. Detractors of remix allege correctly that this type of work intentionally obfuscates the original context of its components. They claim also correctly that taking video clips out of context is, by definition, an act of deliberate misrepresentation. Detractors believe this is enough to dismiss critical remix outright as propaganda, and this is where we part. Their argument goes that the truth as a remix artist sees it cannot be supported by material which is faithful to its original context, but instead requires ripping it out of context, then it has no truth value. 5 lies edited together do not a truth make. But consider the treatment of Shirley Sherrod, a casualty of propaganda. A brief excerpt from Sherrod's speech is shown on Fox News and the knives come out. She gets fired and the White House apologizes for her seemingly offensive statements. But just a few more seconds of video show the context and meaning of her speech are the opposite of what was conveyed in the soundbite. This is a hold-up-at-knife point of a person's entire life at the hands of Fox News. It's one thing to play with sharp objects, it's another to leave them out where kids can get at them, and it's another thing still to hope they do. But such criticisms, pointed as they may be, pun intended, are misdirected when applied to critical remix. It is here that an aesthetics of deception, as developed by Friedrich Nietzsche, remains incredibly relevant to discussions on media theory and contemporary representation. Nietzsche contends that illusion is a defining characteristic of representational artworks, and it is through this illusory sphere, the creative lie, that consequent truth claims emerge with which we can form new understandings. He says that art treats illusion as illusion, speaking the truth quite generally in the form of lies. And he goes on to address this apparent world by saying that within the context of art, illusions do not actually deceive us, but awaken belief by means of surfaces. To make this more concrete, recall René Magritte's painting of a pipe, humorously informing us that what is depicted on the surface is not an actual pipe, but stands as a painterly illusion of the object in order to raise larger critical questions about representation and the shortcomings of language. Cinema is likewise not real, but rather fashions an allegorical vehicle to larger ideas. Similarly, remix embraces the primacy of illusion so characteristic of art, using it to clarify and contribute to political discourse. For example, consider Terrorizing Dissent, a strong example of critical remix. We see John McCain on national television accepting the Republican nomination for president. While he speaks about a freer, safer, more prosperous world, we see concurrent shots of protesters being gassed outside. As the speech continues, the two scenes are slowly integrated, culminating in the image of John McCain at the podium in front of the chaos outside. The composite is rough, obviously not original footage, and yet his words and the juxtaposition of images and sounds create a holistic context that is closer to the truth of the situation than the stage performance broadcast on television. Understood in this light, the true claims of critical remix are founded on the creative lie and do not qualify as propaganda. In the strongest examples of remix, the voices of dissent and criticism speak through a pastiche of clips. The viewer is not duped by these crafted relationships, but willingly suspends disbelief long enough to engage the artist's rebuttal or further explication of a critical issue. Critical remix thus repudiates the ideologies embedded within the source, providing a corrective lens to the manipulative means and postures of powerful institutions. The creative lie and free speech equals free media are just two examples of what makes this work important. There are other aspects of this work that remain to be articulated, but we will never know what we might learn from Remix if we fail to protect it. We can reclaim the creative freedoms that have served us so well in the past and secure the rights of the individual to engage in public discourse. We can speak out, claiming a place for critical remix by viewing, discussing, creating, and encouraging these artists. For my part, I am pleased to announce the Appropriation Alliance Critical Remix Festival on the theme of oil and war. You can find our call for entry, a way to donate, the full text of this paper, and a form to submit your critical writing on Remix by picking up one of these cards and visiting our website, appropriationalliance.org. Thank you.